Edinburgh, a man once warned that something was moving beneath the surface of society. Almost no one believed him. John Robison was not an outsider. Born in 1739, he was a Scottish physicist and mathematician, and later became Professor of Natural Philosophy here at the Old College of the University of Edinburgh. He was part of the intellectual world of Enlightenment, a member of the Edinburgh Philosophical Society, and later the first General Secretary of the Royal Society of Edinburgh. He worked alongside James Watt on early steam technology, including early steam-powered vehicles, and even invented the siren. But after the French Revolution, his views began to change. He became increasingly critical of the very intellectual circles he had once been part of. In 1797, he published Proofs of a Conspiracy, a work claiming that Freemasonry had been infiltrated by Adam Weishaupt's Order of the Illuminati, and that earlier influences, including the Jesuits, had already shaped the lodges from within. One of the sources behind these claims was Alexander Horne, a Scottish Benedictine monk turned secret agent and diplomat. Robison wrote, "The association of which I have been speaking is the Order of Illuminati, abolished in 1786, but revived immediately after under another name and in a different form, and has spread into all the countries of Europe." Later descriptions of the Illuminati claimed, "The great strength of our order lies in its concealment," and Robison believed that kind of influence was already at work. As he wrote, "The Jesuits interfered considerably, insinuating themselves into the lodges." He wasn't describing something outside society. He was describing something secret, moving within it. As he wrote, "Even the spiritual threatenings of the Church could not make the brethren break their oath of secrecy. A full confidence in their security made these free-thinking brethren bring forward sentiments they were afraid to hazard in ordinary society, and these meetings were no longer limited to their original purpose. As Robison noted, there is undoubtedly a dignity in the art of building or in architecture, but over time the lodges changed. Persons of various professions and in various ranks of civil society entered them, and with that the purpose began to shift. It cannot be supposed that the employment in those meetings related entirely to the ostensible profession of masonry. What began as a craft became something broader, a place where ideas about society, politics, and belief could be introduced, discussed, and spread. Construction of the Old College began in 1789, designed by Robert Adam, at a time when Edinburgh was becoming one of the intellectual centres of Europe. This building brought together law, philosophy, and medicine under one roof, not just to study ideas, but to organize them, teach them, and send them out into the world. Those who passed through here did not remain inside it. They moved into positions of influence in government, in law, and across society. Here at the university, plaques remember figures such as James Lorimer, Professor of Public Law, whose work dealt with authority, nations, and the structure of power between them. James Miranda Barry, an army surgeon who lived and worked as a man in order to access medical education, rank, and authority, only discovered after death to have been biologically female. And William James, a philosopher who argued that belief is not passive, that what people accept as true shapes how they act, and over time shapes reality itself. As he put it, the greatest discovery of my generation is that a human being can alter his life by altering his attitudes. And here at the old college, that process begins to take shape. Education doesn't just pass on knowledge, it forms attitudes. Ideas are taught and reinforced, shaping how individuals see the world long after they leave. And this is what Robison feared, that organizations like these could be entered, influenced, and used to shape ideas to serve different ends. As he wrote, breaking all the bands of society, that the leaders might rule the world with uncontrollable power, and the rest be degraded, corrupted, and employed as mere tools of the ambition of their unknown superiors. This is Greyfriars Kirkyard, founded in August 1562 after royal sanctions were granted to replace the churchyard at St Giles Cathedral. John Robison is believed to be buried here, a man who said he was warning the world, but there is no marked grave, no clear stone, in a place where names are cut into history. His has disappeared. Greyfriars takes its name from the followers of Francis of Assisi, the Grey Friars. In medieval Britain, a friar was a wandering religious brother, and grey simply described the colour of their robes. They rejected wealth and lived visibly among the people. Alongside them were figures like Clare of Assisi and Anthony of Padua, part of a movement built not on secrecy, but on simplicity and public preaching. But that world didn't survive. After the Reformation, the friars were gone, and what remained was only the name. This monument belongs to the Adam family. At the top, William Adam, architect. Family members recorded around him, and if you look closely, the dates are marked with a J, likely meaning in the year of Jesus, though some interpret it as a stylized number 1. In 1638, something happened here that would divide the country. The National Covenant was signed, and a later copy is preserved and displayed inside the church. It was a rejection of attempts by the Crown to control the Church of Scotland. A declaration that authority would not come from an earthly king, but from the King above. People came forward to sign it. Nobles, ministers, and ordinary citizens. Names were written onto parchment, and according to accounts, some even signed in blood. No single original remains. The document was copied, carried across the country, signed again and again. And in the years that followed, those who held to it, the Covenanters, were hunted, imprisoned here, and executed. A period later remembered as the Killing Time. Greyfriars Kirk didn't remain unchanged. In 1718, an explosion destroyed the church tower. When it was rebuilt, the church was divided, forming Old Greyfriars and New Greyfriars. Then in 1845, fire tore through Old Greyfriars, destroying much of the interior. What stands here now is not entirely what stood before. In old Edinburgh, people didn't meet at a distance. They met in closes like these. In the 18th century, clubs and societies were everywhere. These weren't secret societies, but they weren't fully public either. Groups like the Select Society, the Poker Club, and the Oyster Club brought together some of the most influential people in Scotland, such as Adam Smith, David Hume, and James Hutton. They also met on Niddry Street, just above these vaults, where figures like Benjamin Franklin joined discussions. They ate, drank, and debated ideas, politics, religion, society. Some meetings even moved between locations, a movable feast, so only those in the know could attend. Other clubs took a different form. The Cape Club met in private rooms, where members used nicknames and kept proceedings within the group. The Crocklin Fencibles gathered nearby for drinking, songs, and shared company. There were countless others: the Beggars' Benison, the Boar Club, and the Dirty Club, each with its own rules and its own purpose. But down here, in these vaults, things were different. These spaces were used for drinking dens and gambling rooms, places where workers and locals gathered out of sight, away from the street above, not centres of high society, but still part of the same hidden life of the city. Some focused on debate, others on status, others on indulgence, but they all shared the same structure: private spaces, selective membership, controlled access, not hidden underground, but hidden in plain sight. In a world where most organisations could never mark the streets with their symbol, here at the Canongate, the Order of St. John has its emblem set into the road. Just along from here is one of the most significant Masonic lodges in Scotland, Lodge Canongate, Kilwinning No. 2. Founded in the 17th century, it's one of the oldest working lodges in the world. Its members have included craftsmen, merchants, and figures connected to Edinburgh's intellectual life. The building itself is easy to miss, but behind those doors, private meetings have taken place for centuries. Like the clubs and societies across the city, it follows the same pattern: private space, selective membership, and what happens inside stays inside. Among its members was Robert Burns, Scotland's national poet and an active Freemason. He attended lodge meetings, wrote songs for them, and moved within the same network of clubs, societies, and private gatherings across the city. This is the world Robison was writing about. He described networks of lodges and meetings where ideas could spread outside public view. He wrote, "I have found that the covert of a Mason lodge had been employed in every country for venting and propagating sentiments in religion and politics that could not have circulated in public. And further, they have formed in these lodges a system of government totally unknown to the rest of the society." And at his most extreme, he wrote, "Their real intention was to abolish all religion, overturn every government, and make the world a general plunder and wreck." Let's take a look around the museum, then we'll head up to Arthur's Seat and over to Duddingston village. Here is the Toll Booth Tavern, a building that dates back to the 16th century, once part of the old Canongate toll booth, where taxes were collected and prisoners were held. Just nearby is the Canongate Market Cross. The oldest part is the octagonal base it stands on, with 8 sides. That shape has often been interpreted symbolically, a kind of meeting point between the circle and the square, the heavenly and the earthly. In Christian tradition, the number 8 can represent renewal, the 8th day beyond 7 days of creation. You also see it in music, the octave where the 8th note begins again at a higher level. Whether intentional or not, it's a form that carries meaning. Close by is the Physic Garden at the Palace of Holyrood House. First established in the 17th century by doctors like Sir Robert Sibbald and Sir Andrew Balfour. It was created as a place to study the medicinal properties of plants. It was one of the earliest gardens of its kind in Scotland, a space for learning, observation, and the sharing of knowledge. Another example of how in Edinburgh, ideas weren't just discussed, they were cultivated. Here is St. Margaret's Well. This structure dates back to the late 15th century. It sits over a natural spring. The water isn't stored, it's constantly moving. It is said that rain filters down through the ground, gathers underground, and rises back up at this point, flowing continuously. That meant it could run for centuries. But to people in the past, something like this wasn't just practical. A source of water that never seems to run dry felt significant. And honestly, I agree. Here at Arthur's Seat, the idea of what lies beneath the city still lingers. Some modern writers, like Andrew Hennessy, have claimed that parts of this hill once connected to tunnels and caverns, stretching toward the city, Roslin, and beyond. Entrances, he said, were sealed off centuries ago. There's no solid evidence for it, but the idea persists that beneath the visible city, there may always be something more. There is, however, a tunnel nearby that can still be accessed, and I'll be visiting it shortly. Here are the ruins of St. Anthony's Chapel, thought to date back to the 15th century. The chapel is dedicated to St. Anthony the Great, who lived between 251 and 356 AD. He was an early Christian hermit who withdrew into the Egyptian desert, choosing a life of isolation. Stories about him go much further. At one point, he believed himself to be the first man to live alone in the desert, until a vision told him there was another, a better hermit, living deeper within it. So he set out to find him. On that journey, he is said to have encountered strange beings, creatures described as part human, part animal, a centaur, and then a satyr. Whether taken as literal beings or something more symbolic, Later writers understood them as demonic, attempts to confuse or mislead him as he moved deeper into isolation. But the most intense stories come from his time alone. Living in tombs and caves, he is said to have been attacked by demons, not just in visions, but physically. In one account, he is beaten so badly that those who found him believed he was dead. He is brought back to life and he returns to the cave. And when the attacks come again, described as wild beasts tearing at him, a sudden light fills the space and the figures vanish. He later says God had been there all along, watching and waiting. Whether taken literally or symbolically, these stories became central to his legacy. Set high above the city, this chapel would have been a place of quiet retreat, removed from everyday life below. Just beyond the tunnel, this area was once known as the Wells o' Weary. Today, all that remains are small ponds, but historically, this was one of several wells surrounding Arthur's Seat. Much of it was disturbed when the tunnel was cut through the south side of Arthur's Seat, causing the wells to collapse or fall back into the earth. The Wells o' Weary were used as a water source, said to cure the weary traveller. In 1572, a woman named Janet Boyman of the Canongate was accused of witchcraft here. According to the records, she went to what was described as an ale-rich well on the south side of Arthur's Seat. She was trying to help a sick man, Alan Anderson, who was her patient. At the well, she performed incantations, calling on spirits to reveal what would happen to him and to help cure him. It's said that a sudden blast of wind rose like a whirlwind, and then a figure appeared on the opposite side of the water. She addressed it in the name of the Father, the Son, King Arthur, and Queen Elspeth, asking for a cure. Instructions were given, passed on to the man's wife, explaining exactly what needed to be done. But when those instructions weren't followed properly, things changed. That night, the house was filled with violent noise and something unseen. The following night, it came again. Whether taken as belief or folklore, it shows how places like this were understood. Not just as wells, but as places people turned to when they wanted something beyond the ordinary. And just beyond this is Duddingston Loch, a natural freshwater loch and one of the oldest features in Edinburgh. People have been using this landscape for thousands of years. In 1778, A collection of Bronze Age weapons, now known as the Duddingston Hoard, was discovered in the Loch. Swords, spearheads and other objects, many of them deliberately broken. It's thought they may have been placed in the water as offerings. So within a short distance, destroyed wells associated with healing and ritual, and the Loch where objects were deliberately placed into the water. In the village of Duddingston stands Duddingston Kirk. This church dates back to the 12th century, and in the medieval period it sat at the centre of the community. At the entrance you can still see the Dukes, a metal collar fixed to the wall. The person would be locked into it, held in place outside the church, forced to stand there in full view of everyone coming and going, day and night, in all weather, for as long as their offence required. It wasn't just punishment, it was public humiliation. Offences like public drunkenness, disorderly behaviour, spreading gossip, or even failing to attend church could all lead to this, because this wasn't just a place of worship, it was also where order was enforced. The Kirk is associated with Saint Duick, a Scottish saint known for healing and pilgrimage, someone people travelled long distances to seek out. The Kirk is one of the oldest churches in Scotland where worship is still carried out. Around it, there are other traces of how this place was used, and a gatehouse built to guard against body snatchers who came looking for fresh graves to supply Edinburgh's medical schools. The church itself carries even older details. Parts of the stonework date back to the Norman period, and you can still see carvings in the wall, Christ on the cross and a knight slaying a beast. We're now heading back up towards Arthur's Seat. Up on Dunsapie Hill, there are traces of an ancient fort. It sits above the loch, with steep ground protecting it on most sides, and access mainly from the east. What remains today is faint. Low banks, broken stone, and the outline of a former enclosure. Most of the original structure is gone. The stone was taken and reused over time. Forts like this are often linked to the Votadini, an Iron Age tribe who lived across this region before the Romans. So this hill has been used for thousands of years. Thanks for watching this episode of Kirks and Crowns. We'll see you next time.